Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to pick up a game that we started when I first started streaming called No Turning Back. It's a 2D pixel art game. Most of the graphics are already brought in. A lot of the systems are already in place, and we just really start bringing in game mechanics. I haven't worked on this project in a little bit, so I'm going to kind of step through it and see where we left it off, and then kind of see where we want to go next. So let's go ahead and get going on this. So if you look, I'm running this in Unity3d, and when I run this app, we have a title screen, and it looks like I have an options already set up. This is my character selection I have here. At the moment I have 8 characters. These are set up inside of a UI grid, I believe, or are these actually... If you look at my character panel, these are images that are within a grid, so that's fine. I need to make sure, though, that this changes, because the mechanic of this game is that you have... well, we'd have to look at the assets, and I can show you the number of different characters which exist in this game. So we have selections already set up, as well as text scrolls, so we could select one. And I don't believe it actually loads that skin in, but you can see that we have our tile generation system here. Oh, I created a little tutorial thing. No. And so this is our tile generation system that we've created, and you can see that we have it so you can go back and forth between levels. I think we have item generation set up as well. I have a little problem with one of my initial tiles, and then we have, if you recall, we have worlds, and then also we have, interesting, we have worlds, and then we also have palaces. So if you, let me step through the levels real quick. So the way that a level works is you have a world, okay? So for example, we start at the home world, and then you go to world 1. And a world consists of both a travel level and then also a palace level, which have a number of maps for each one of them. So here, this is home. It looks like I have one enumerator in here that doesn't have its scriptable objects referenced. So when I step through, you can see, and remember, I can always go back. When I step through, interesting, I wonder what's happening here. It's telling me that my database is here for my tile set tiles. In my tile set tiles, I should have another one in here, forest tile set tiles, and you can see that this is a map tile that is for a forest tile set tile. But if you look at forest, you should also have something here called factory. So let me look at where I'm creating these things. So inside of my mono behavior here under my manager, where I'm loading my map manager, which is my game manager, probably you have something here called a new game, which is loading reset worlds, create worlds here. You're seeding it, you're creating a player, you're adding your world objects here, and then you're assigning the map. So the one that you wanted to change was when you change the world, it's a on map event. You're loading the previous map, you're removing the player from it, you're finding the door to the next map. Go to next map. Okay, so here, if it doesn't have a previous door tile, then you're going to load a new map on the fly. And then when you are selecting the new create world, not this one, you have one in here where you're selecting the type, load map next thread, not that one. Make blocking tiles. No. You have something in here. I'm looking for this one. I swear it's this. Make map at location. Create world. So when you create this world, you're passing in a texture atlas, and then you're doing a, what is this? Infit? This should be an init. Let's take a look at this. You're passing in the get level rarity, not that one. Get number of tiles, not that one. Just a moment. It's not in the scriptable object factory. It's a it's not this one. Hold on. Make levels in world, maybe. Yeah, this is the one. So here, what I'm saying is that if it's a level 0, then we're just going to have this travel. If it's a level 1, then we're going to have a forest. And now this one, you're saying that this can be a palace type here for case 2. And this is where this was failing. Get level rarity, travel, get map type next. This is the one I was looking for this whole time. Default, while this is not equal to palace, or this is equal to factory, then here. So let's break there. We'll attach this to Unity and we'll switch over. Try it again. See why it's breaking here. But I thought I also put items in here, but I don't know if it was creating them yet. And we're going to go back to the title, I think, and add in a... What's wrong? There. I won't put in the game object and the player from the beginning. No, I don't want to take the tutorial, okay? One. We should see it get the map type next here in just a second. Failed. Where? It's saying that it's failing in my sub assets for get database world item. Okay, so it's a world item that's failing. So that's easy. If we look at my database here, which you've created in the scriptable objects called, not that. Don't you have something in here called like items dictionary, this thing? And if I look here at my supply items that you're creating, it has my skins in there. And if I look at skin sprites, it has the tile set tile, which is this one. Okay. So that looked fine. Let me jump into the other scene here. We'll jump over to home. And what I want to do was look at this is called World Objects Database. And you have something here called a item world object. I don't even see where this is. This is a database. Is this why? Of type item. And I think that that should resolve it. Because it was called items here in your... You have a scriptable object here called, where did it go? Items. This one. Because see, like tile set tiles here says that this is a manager too, but it's not. This is a database. as is this one. So let's try it again now. Now, I don't think it's going to work, maybe, unless you have it already set up so that... There. So you can see that we have our items which are instantiated, and I believe that it holds reference to them between levels. Yeah, so there's our next map. And so if I run back, I should be able to still see the same items in the same places, and I do. We don't have our collision set up on those. But I'm happy with that. I'm unhappy with this tile. So let's take a look back at my title here. When you're starting the game, we need to create some art for the back of that, and we need to hook these things up. I'm okay right now. We're going to actually hook them up. So let's go ahead and take a look at my solution here. And I want to look at my global manager. I should have something in here called like a player, right? Is it inside of game? And I changed how this thing is running. It should be using hardware acceleration now, Visual Studio, so we'll see if it runs any better. Here, this is my world object player. And then player world object. That's not necessarily exactly what I want. What I want is a new scriptable object here called a... It's not an object system. It's going to be a new... add new class called settings. And we'll make it a public. And the things that it has on it are let's see. Do I want to make this a scriptable object? I don't think so. But then you could already serialize it and send it out to the server, or you could store it. So it's probably easier just to do a... Don't you have something here like a base object or something like that? Or a base, or just, isn't this inheriting from just a scriptable object and disposable? So we can do that same thing here, scriptable object and disposable. And the first thing that you had was a game speed, which was a float. Oh, you can't do that in Unity. The next thing you had was a public bool online is play online is online. We'll just say online. We'll have a public float for my sound FX level, and then we could say a public float here called a music level. Doesn't have disposable on it, which is fine for what this is. And that's it for this one, okay? So now when you are starting the game here, under Global Manager, you need to load in your settings here. Now, if not online, load from player preferences. So what does this mean? Get settings from WebAPI. So hey there, hey there, Tater. How are you doing today? Welcome to the channel. If you have any questions, please make sure you put them into the channel. Also, all the videos, I guess since not all of them, so we're putting these videos starting now up on youtube.pixellorestudios.com, and then also we have like a couple ASP.NET projects up there as well. So make sure you check that out. Give a follow if you haven't. Okay, so you want to look here. This says get settings from Web API. So if I look here, we can look at a Unity check if online. I mean, you could just essentially try to authorize yourself right now, right? Oh, stupid. There's something in here called network.testConnection. Var network test equals network.testConnection. Oh, thanks, says Tater. Okay. So now, when you're testing this connection, you can switch on this, right? Perfect. So let's go ahead and make a new class here called a private enumerator. And we're going to say that this is a load settings. Hey, Droton, thank you for that follow. Appreciate it. Again, all these videos are up at youtube.pixellorestudios.com, so make sure you check that out. If you have any questions, please make sure you put them into the channel. And let me put a link up to the Discord, which is the main way that everyone stays in communication. We're up to like 230 developers strong, so appreciate your support as well. Okay, this is called load settings here, and we don't need to pass anything. And what I'm going to do is enumerable. I just don't remember this stupid thing. Coroutine Unity. Enumerator. And so now what we need to do here is we want to do a get. So I can do a www hit ASP.NET Web API from Unity. Here you go. We can do this with a HTTP client. Can I? Or is that too new? You don't want this. Unity hit ASP.NET. So you want to say ASP.NET Unity3d, and we can say we want to do, if I can't do it this way, we'll do it with .NET 3.5. I don't care about this. I only want to see this thing. This is exactly what I want. Okay, so let's do it. Use something like this. So we're going to have a piece of JSON here, which is going to be a get var settings to get here. And we're going to do a I think we can just do something like a var settings equals a new www, and we can do a it's my URL, and then we can have a body and headers. So for a get, we don't have a body and we don't have headers. Hey Tim, thank you for that host there with 12 viewers, man. Very much appreciate that. How are you guys doing? Dub in Unity. Thanks again for that host, Tim. Welcome. In case you don't know me, my name is Rob. Mostly I'm working on an ASP.NET MVC application called AliChat, but we're at a point with that now where I'm refactoring off air because it's just about ready to go to production, and we're moving back to a game that we were working on called No Turning Back. So if you have any questions about it, please put them in. BWilly42 says, I was here in the beginning of you programming the game, just back for a first time in a while. Excited to see progress. Thanks, man. Hey man, says Krogel ARG. How long have you been working with Unity? 3 years. 3 years, I think. Dalton says, dub. I said it before Google. Yeah, I know it's the www class. So we'll do like an HTTPS www localhost. And now I'm going to open up another Unity, or I'm sorry, another Visual Studio instance over here. We'll do this. And while that loads over here, we can just say it's like 343434 slash no turning back slash settings question mark ID equals, and then whatever my user ID is here. So we'll say var user ID equals something. We can say user ID like that. And then because we're in the old string doc format, because we're in 3.5. Nice type rate. I'm a refugee, says Tail Phoenix Twitch. Hey there, says Argus. How are you? I was watching you a few times. You only saw you program. You also make some graphics. How do you get graphics? We are 3 people who like to do games, but we have some issues with graphics. Nobody ever did 3D art and pixels. Yeah, it's hard to find artists. Yeah, that's essentially one of the challenging things. It's always hard to find artists. So you just kind of got to find networking people who know people. And yeah, sometimes I purchase assets. I find that that's one way to get them. So my settings to get here, I need to move over to this one, and we're going to make a new ASP.NET project. And it's just going to be a Windows Classic Desktop. I'm sorry, we want to do a web application.NET Core, and give me just a moment to put this somewhere. Okay, I'll put it right here on the desktop, and we'll just say test web API. We only need web API in this with no authorization at the moment. Why not? Looks good. I guess we'll add unit tests too. If you guys haven't, make sure you follow me on YouTube. All the videos for this and some other projects are up there. Also on discord.pixelorstudios.com. Give it a second here to load. And in the meantime, is there like an await on this? I guess this is synchronous like this, right? Stupid. Okay. 9 a.m. You still up or just up? Oh, I started at like 5:30 in the morning, and I'm up this morning. I mean, I usually start at 5:30. I'm a morning person. Okay. So here, oh, it's still creating. Now, I guess you'll also need to have a list here of GUID called characters unlocked or something like that. Okay, so we finally loaded over here. So if I look at my ASP.NET project now, and I look at my SSL, we want to enable that for now. We get an SSL URL, which is fine. I want to change that to my startup type over here. 461, I'm okay with that. Under build, under web, we can change my start URL to this HTTPS one. And then we can just run it just to make sure that everything's running. What is your goal? Would you like to have any AAA game dev studio, or would you like to have your own indie studio? I like community game development. I'm a big advocate of that. I also like continuing education. So I like to see, like with the community of developers that we have, I like to see like the younger people push the older people, and the older people bring experience to the table. And so it's like a community of developers that have an advancement all together. And I think within that, you can create amazing products. So I don't really know how to answer that question aside from there. Okay, so everything's running. Here's my ASP.NET app running over here. I don't see my authorization here to log in, but whatever, I don't care. It's got an API helper page built into it here. which is great. Here you can see that I already have account information that I want to work with. So let's create a new endpoint. The first thing I need to do is in my models, I'm going to create a new model here under a new folder called no returning back. And we're going to create one called settings. And what I need to do is jump over into no turning back and grab this. Bring it here. And remember, these are not the typical POCO models, so we have to change these for regular .NET. Okay, we need to adjust my naming convention to Pascal case, and we're good there. Now, when I hit this, we need to create a new controller here, and we can just scaffold it, a new scaffolded item. Just a moment. Yes. And we can say that this is a web API 2 using entity framework actions. My model type is called settings. My data context is called application database context, and we want to use asynchronous controller actions. Our controller name will be called settings. Just a moment, it tells me I need to rebuild the project. Camel case. Camel case is where you have the lowercase one in front, right? And then everything else is capital. Pascal case is when you just capitalize everything. Okay, so now we can try to add that again. New scaffolded item here for this web API with entity framework of my settings class, and my data context class is there, and we'll add it. Now this will do everything for me. This will already create my settings has no key defined. So to change that, we do a prop, and it's a GUID called my ID. Come on, Robbie, come on. Called ID, and it's this one is a key, and it's database generated, and it has a database generated option of my identity or something like that. And then we also want to add in here a timestamp, right? So this is going to be a date time called a timestamp, and we'll set that equal to my date time dot, pardon me, UTC now. Okay, so now it should work when I scaffold this. Try that for the third time is the charm. Called settings under my application database context and use asynchronous actions. We're going to add Swagger in here so we can test it. I don't understand here. Let me rebuild it. It was a little unhappy. I'll clean it, rebuild it, and delete the OBJ and the bin file. Let me close this real quick. We'll reopen it. Rebuild it. Oh, come on. Okay, we'll just go ahead and clean it, build it, and then run it. Wait for the build to finish. Build succeeded. We'll add a new scaffolded item here called settings. And that's under my application database context. It shouldn't be taking this long to get it to scaffold here. Okay. While this runs, I need to get a connection string. So that's pretty easy. Let me grab one from a different project here. Okay, so here it is. Now this actually does everything for me, and it already creates all my actions, and I don't have authorization set up, which is fine. We can add a route prefix onto here, call this no turning back. Hey there, YMing90312. Thank you for that follow. You must be local, close by me here in California with that zip code. Thanks, man. How are you doing today? Appreciate the support. Also, all the videos are up at youtube.pixelhorsevideos.com. So I want to, now that we have this set up, I need to also add in a install package called Swashbuckle, which will add Swagger to this. Now let me grab a connection string here as this installs, and then we're just going to let this run in the background. Hey there, Kay Austin. How are you doing this morning? Welcome. Is this thing running still? It hasn't finished yet. Let this thing finish. Okay, it's done, and now I can run this and we'll see if everything took. Oh, it's not going to work because I don't have my connection string. Let me grab that. What? Just a second here. I don't understand what's happening there. We'll close that one out. Just let that ride for now. I need to get a connection string here for SQL Server. So let me see what I can do here about that. Just a second here. This is where it is, and it would be right here in this thing. Okay, just a second so I don't reveal this, please. I'm still with you. Just a moment while I add my connection string in here. Almost done. Almost done. And we'll call this database here no turning back. Okay? And now I can bring you guys back onto the screen. Thanks for staying with me on that. There's a whole website where you can get connection strings. Yeah, I already have one though, defined, and it has the multiple sources, because you know what I'm talking about, how sometimes it's like you have to tell it that you're going to have multiple connections with one login, so to say. So we can run this now. I need to update my database and migration. Oh, sorry, it's a enable migrations. I'm assuming it's probably going to tell me it doesn't have it, or it might. And if I look at my startup now, thank you though for that link there, Krogel. Krogel. Come on. When I look at startup, I see configure auth. Do I see that it's starting Swashbuckle? That would be here under startup, under Swagger. We see my register. It's registering my test API, so we'll call this no turning back or something like that. What was that pretty print thing? I don't even know what that is. We'll just try it. Okay, it's enabled them. We'll add my migration here. We'll call it init. Open up SQL Server Management Studio. Okay, here it is. Everything's running. You can see we've scaffolded it. Now we're going to update the database here. This should create my identity tables, and then also I'm using SQL Express on my local machine. And then I use AWS for production. So here we are. This is working. Everything built, and we'll run it. Now here are the tests that I've not run, which are fine. Here's the web API running. You can see, in fact, we're in here under HTTPS. I should be able to run Swagger, and here you can see my endpoints. So I should be able to, for example, register through here. Passwords must see, so we already have our user system set up. And if I look here under settings, you can see I have my get for settings, which will do nothing. Response code 202. I can post a settings in here where we don't have an ID to post. Interesting that it's asking me to post one. So we need to change that. A game speed here, which will be like 5, an online, whatever. And then characters unlocked. Okay, so let's fix a little bit of this stuff. When I look in here at my settings, we can first get rid of this one. I'm not really into that so much. And then this is the GUID, but we don't want to see it. So this is going to be my entity, and then we need to have a settings view model. Which is almost the same thing, except without this ID. Actually, it includes, yeah. Sorry, this will be called a settings create request, like that. And so now here under my settings, when I'm doing a post settings, this is a settings create request. And now I need to do a mapper. So this is a new package called add install package called auto mapper. Why not Azure? Because I'm already on AWS. It's what I've been using. I tried to sign up for BizSpark, but they declined me. Otherwise, I'd be on there right now. Why would the register call have 2 passwords? Isn't a client verification instead of a server verification? That's just how Microsoft sets it up generically, so that it's running password validation both client side and server side. And that's so because you can hit the web API without going through a website. So now that I've added this, I need to create an instance of it, which is here in my, we need to install a package here called a Unity.WebAPI. While that loads, in my constructor, I can add in here a iMapper called mapper, and we're going to have a private iMapper called mapper. Okay, because down here now I can do a var settings, I'll just call it an entity, equals a mapper.map, go away, mapper.map, the settings from the request. And then you're going to add in this entity here. Okay, that should create it correctly. I need to make sure that in my Unity config that you're calling this method, register components from your global. What is wrong here? What is happening in here? Unity config is a static class where you're creating this container, and here what you want to do is you want to say var mapper equals a new mapper configuration, and it's going to be of like this dot create mapper. This thing's got all kinds of issues going on. And so now this one looks like this. Oh, that's fine. Now it's finally happy there. And so now what I can do is I can do a c.create map, and it's going to go from my settings to my settings create request to my settings, and then dot reverse something, 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 whatever. Okay, let's close everything. I'm going to comment this out, and we're going to rebuild it and clean it. Then I think we're done with this web API. Interesting. Today, what is that call? I haven't seen that for a bot before. We can add that in when we get our bot up and running. This thing, let's rebuild it. You're making a server for the game. I'm just making a temporary authorization server so that I can hit it and grab my settings from my server. Yes. It's just about done though. This is a quick and dirty. Okay. If I were to run this, is it going to run? Because identifier expected in here. Get rid of this one. We'll run it. Currently chat is done. Asks empty132. I'm doing the final refactor on it, and almost all of that's completed. I have just a little bit to do off air, and I'm launching the individual pieces, so it should be live here in the next week, and then we'll come in and we will clean up the front end. Okay, so it's finally registering correctly. Here, it says that it can't find my test web API Unity config. It can't find the this. So if you look in your models, let's add that here. I wonder what's going on with why this won't display correctly here. Well, it works, but it's not going to work yet because you have to do a container.register instance of the mapper. And then in your Unity config in your global start, you need to do this dot this one here. Now, we're going to close this whole thing, and I'm going to reopen it because it's really bugging me out. open this thing back up here. Okay, everything looks like it's working now, and we will run it. And this should be done here. Everything should be finished on this. And some of the streams that come in shows what it's working on. Oh, that's a good idea. I should start implementing that. Let me do the Swagger on this one. And we'll go into the settings and we're going to post one. And now it should just ask me for these game speed, the online play, my sound effects, and my music level. We'll try it out. It says that, in fact, it did create this record. 201 means that it's created. If we look in the database here, here are my settings. And if I look at my record, it's been, in fact, created. And if I look back here at the settings for Get Everything, you can see that we have it. So let's hit this endpoint. We'll leave our server running here. And we can now come back over into Unity. We can get rid of this one. We need to bring this in, no turning back, settings, question mark, ID equals, and let's grab our ID, which was this one. Now, how do you do this? I guess it's a yield dub. I wonder why it's not letting me see yield here. One more second here. Like that. And now what you should be able to do is if my settings dot is done or error, in here you're going to say debug.log your settings.error. If this string is not a string dot is null or white space or whatever, then you want to debug it. Else what you want to do is you want to debug dot log your settings dot text. So when you start this global manager right here under everything else, you'll do a start coroutine load settings. And now let's see if it works. Let's bring this up here and do this network test first. And now we'll see what happens when we run this. .404 not found, undetermined. So again, our endpoint that we were hitting is we want to run this one, I'm assuming, right? If I look at my path here, oh. If you look here at Swagger, under settings, it's called it's not using this at the moment, it's using API, not no turning back. So let's run it now, and then over here we need to change this to be API. And now it should be fine. Undetermined. Here it is. It's hit. We're retrieving the settings. And in fact, we've retrieved our settings from our server. So now what I can do is I should be able to do something like whoops, I didn't mean to close that one. I should be able to take this and do like a JSON utility dot from JSON, and we want to make it a type of settings. Okay. And then this needs to be a JSON, which is my settings.text. And then just for fun, we will do a debug.log settings dot sound effects level. Let's do an ID on that. So we'll say that this is my settings object or something like that. Because when you look here at settings object here, you also need to make sure that you have a public GUID called an ID. Not like that. And then also a public date time called a timestamp. Okay, we'll run it one more time. Now it says that it can't deserialize. Because ID Good morning, ThinkBot Labs. My holiday was great. Short. Happy to be back though, working on a game. How are you doing this fine morning? Cannot deserialize to a new instance of settings. Why is that? I don't see any reason why it should have a problem. Is it because they are not capitals? Is that literally all it is? Is that my models are just that little bit off? One thing that I was wondering is if I could just use the 3.5 version of Newtonsoft, but I'd rather not. Let's try it again. Doing well, thanks. Same thing. So instead of this one, we'll do this. Let's try it again. Try it again. All right, so let's try something different here. Now, instead of doing this, what we're going to do is we're going to do a var settings new equals a create instance of my scriptable object.create instance of my type of settings, like this, and then we can do settings new dot. I wonder if it'll let me do something like that. Probably not, huh? Nope. Settings new dot game speed equals 5. Settings new dot music level equals 10. Settings new dot sound effects level equals 2. Settings new dot, and that looks fine. Now what I want to do is I want to serialize that. Var string equals a scriptable, it's a JSON utility dot serial front to JSON of my object type settings new, and then we want to debug log on that. Let's try that. So here it's created it. So what I want to do then is look, because we're getting some weird error here. I want to do Unity3d deserialize, serialize, and we want to say JSON utility JSON utility can only be used for data classes. So let's try this one here. But that should already be defaulted in here, so we don't need to really worry about it. And then instead of doing this one here, I'm going to try here to deserialize again. var settings object 2 equals JSON utility dot from JSON to a type settings of your settings of my JSON. Now let's go ahead and check it here, attach it. Let's run it again. Okay. All right, so that one failed again, and this one should not because we already know that this is the exact type. So is it because settings is deriving from this scriptable object? So if I looked at settings again and I removed that and I were to run it, now here we could say that this is a new settings, like this. Game speed equals 5, music level equals 10, sound effects level equals 2. Let's attach it and run it again. Okay, here we go. Hey, it hit. Right here. We're going to deserialize it, and at that time it worked. And now, if we were to get our settings object, that time it's going to have worked. So we can, now that we have that correctly working, we can get rid of this one. And we can get rid of this. And then we can get rid of this one here. And I want to look at my settings. We can add in the 2 that I removed. And that's it. So here, when we get our settings, if this is not an error, then we're going to deserialize this object. And at the moment, I'm returning this ID. I don't really care about that. But what I want to do now is load these settings into the global manager. So here, you need to have a protected static called your settings, called your player settings. This thing should have another one on here. It's called a public bool is from server. And then here you're going to say your settings, like that. If error is nothing, then you're going to do this. And these should be available now. So if I was to create down here another static called a settings, and we'll say that this is player settings. And then I want to create a new class in here called a HTTP helper. And in this one, I can create this new load mono behavior. Actually, it's not. It's just this, and it's going to be a using Unity engine. This thing should just be one of, no, it needs to be like this, but you're returning moment. Let's change this to be an HTTP manager. I'm going to move this into mono behaviors, into managers. We're going to go ahead and change this namespace on this to be, wait, where did it go? There it is. HTTP manager here, which is going to be a type of mono behavior. And this is a no turning back dot mono behaviors dot managers. And so here you should be able to do something called a public static. Let's put our player settings on here. So we'll do a protected settings. We'll call it my player settings, like that. Public player settings. Well, I'm just calling it settings at the moment. Player settings. So here we want to do one which is a private string called get user ID, and all we're going to be doing is returning this. This is a protected virtual. Let's do a public protected virtual, and this one will be a protected virtual as well. And here we're going to say that this is my user ID equals my get user ID. Let's go ahead and make sure that this is a singleton. So if we look at my camera script, that's one, for example. No, it's not. Let's look at your global manager. This thing you're saying is a base manager type. So here you could say that this is a base manager of type HTTP manager. And so now here, when you have a protected virtual start, you want to do a start coroutine called your load settings. And so here, you're going to have in your global manager something at the top, a reference in here called, no longer have settings in here, but you're going to have a public HTTP manager called HTTP manager, like that. You no longer have this one, but here, when you have a player settings, you can return your HTTP manager dot looks like you have to assign it here as a protected static, which you'll assign and start, I'm assuming. And so here, this is going to be return your HTTP manager dot settings. Okay, so if I were to build this, we should be good. We are. Come back over into Unity, take a look. Here we are, we're good here. And I need to make a new game object called my It's not going to let me do it, whatever, that's a weird bug. Okay, we're going to add a script to it. And we're going to call it the HTTP manager. And on my global manager, we need to make sure that we have a reference to it. And now we can create it. Now it's pulling, but we're not getting a... If I look at my HTTP manager, when I'm loading my settings here, we can create an event called a public delegate void HTTP event. And it's going to be an object called my sender and then an event args called my args. We need to have it exposed right here as a private event HTTP event. And we're going to say HTTP event. Here in my events, we can add in another args called HTTP, and we're going to call this one a settings args, settings event args, and this will be of type base args, which you're calling base event args, like that. Hey there, serializer, welcome back. This one is going to have a public settings called my settings. And then I guess also a public bool called is from server. And then I guess you'll have another one here for your enum called a public enum settings event type. And you could say loaded. So you can say loaded server, or you could say loaded memory. So we'll just do this here like this. Okay. This is a no turning back events args HTTP. So here, this one is now called a settings event args. And then here you're going to say if my HTTP event is not equal to null, then what you want to do is you want to fire it, passing over this and then a new event args, and you're going to send in your settings, which is your player settings, and then your settings event type, which will be loaded server. which means this can just be a var. You can delete the instance that you're saving. You can get rid of this one. You need to have your event exposed. Sorry, it's an add. And then a remove. You can do null probation with invoke, but that's only in the newer version of .NET, right? I'm in 3.5 at the moment, so I don't believe I have that available. And we no longer need this available. Well, we could save it here because we're going to save my player settings right here on my global manager. Right here. Okay. And so, when you start this and you're awake, for Global Manager, we'll just go ahead and assign that here as a HTTP manager.http event plus equals to on HTTP event. So you'll also need to have a public, can't you do like void on application quit as a protected virtual void? And now you can say if my HTTP event manager does not equal to null, then what you want to do is HTTP manager.event args minus equal to your on HTTP event, and then you have like a that's fine. So when you actually get this event here, you're just going to do your switch on your settings type. Like that. This will be a protected. I guess you're doing this like that, aren't you? Okay. And then finally, if it's loaded into either one of these, I think you're just going to do your settings equals args.settings. And then we'll do a debug.log. Settings received from server and your JSON utility dot serialize to JSON of your player settings. Let's give it a try. I want to move this event down to be with the other event so that they can be friends. Okay, and let me fire it. Yeah, you can't do that in 3.5, says Catalyst Creations. I agree. I don't believe you can. I thought it'd been there forever. Yeah, you have to enable the beta. They're 4.5. Yeah, they have 4.5 beta, and then it caused me problems with some other different things, so I was trying to avoid that. It's experimental, so I don't use it. Hey, this one's saying that here, my HTTP manager is null because it hasn't assigned it yet, because that gets assigned down here in start. Try it again. Yeah, I'm in Unity right now. And we received our settings from the server successfully. The next thing I need to do is save a user ID in player preferences, and then that's what you're going to be pulling until we get it set up with Google Play, which will be providing your authorization. If you're not able to pull from the server, it has to pull from local. So we have to look at my HTTP manager here under my load settings, and we need to say to do, if not online, then load from memory. To do, save a user ID and player preferences, potentially. Use Google Play to authorize. But for now, that this is okay. And so now, here under your HTTP event, I should be able to it's called player settings here. So on my title manager, just a moment. On your title manager, you could have a reference to, you could grab a reference to, guys, I'm going to take a quick break. If you haven't, please click the follow here. All these videos are up at youtube.pixelhorrorstudios.com. For this one, as well as another ASP.NET project, I'll put some music on. I'll be back in 12 minutes, 13 minutes. I'll put a timer up, and I'll see you in just a little bit. Thanks for staying with me. Let me see. Look, I've had issues with it when I've enabled it. I would love to use it for that in string interpolation. I'd love to use it for that in SignalR and JSON Newtonsoft. Do hashtags and string titles do anything anymore? That I don't know either. So, all right, why don't we go ahead and I'll see you guys in just like 13 minutes. Stay with me.